You're on the train headed home. It's a very erotic scene. Well, it's not. That's very funny because sex on the train, there is no sex on the train. At 14, Diane Lane appeared on the cover of Time magazine. By 18, she was a millionaire with an angelic face. She was a teenage star pursued by all of Hollywood. Yet, the further she went, the quieter she became. It wasn't until the age of 59 that Diane finally admitted she had affairs with both Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins, two co-stars long, suspected but never confirmed. From being a youthful icon in A Little Romance to the hauntingly intense scene in Unfaithful, a scene audiences always believed involved real sex, Diane Lane has taken on dozens of emotionally complex roles. She endured 2 failed marriages, a controversial arrest, and countless rumors that were never addressed. But behind those sorrowful eyes, who really is Diane Lane? This is the story that has never been fully told, and one you won't want to. Miss Diane Lane was born on January 22, 1965, in New York City. Her mother, Colleen Lee Farrington, also known as Colleen Price, was a nightclub singer and model who once appeared as Playboy's Miss October 1957 centerfold. Her father, Burton Eugene Lane, was an acting coach in Manhattan who co-ran a theater workshop with John Cassavetes, worked as a taxi driver, and later taught humanities at City College of New York. When Diane was just 13 days old, her parents separated. Her mother later moved to Mexico and filed for divorce, though she retained custody until Diane was 6. She then handed her over to her father upon relocating to Georgia. From then on, Diane lived with her father in New York for many years, moving from one residential hotel to another and often accompanying him in his taxi every day. Diane's childhood was marked by rides across Manhattan in an old cab, irregular schooling, and an unconventional upbringing. She didn't grow up in stability but was immersed in small stages and the bohemian life of artists. It was a time that forced her to mature quickly and become independent. By the age of 15, Diane declared herself emancipated from her father. She flew to Los Angeles for a week with Christopher Atkins, her co-star and friend from Child Bride of Short Creek. Diane would later describe it as a reckless act by a girl who had too much freedom too young. Upon returning to New York, she moved in with a friend's family, paid her own rent, and completed high school through a correspondence program. However, in 1981, her mother suddenly reappeared and abducted her, taking her back to Georgia. Diane and her father sued, and 6 weeks later, she was allowed to return to New York. After that incident, Diane didn't speak to her mother for 3 years until they eventually reconciled. During her time in Georgia with her Pentecostal grandmother, Diane occasionally visited the town of Bow, where she learned to live simply away from the chaos. She spoke of eating salted meat and butter, fixing lawnmowers, and living unburdened. For her, it was a way to stay calm and grounded in the high-pressure world of Hollywood. These experiences, from her parents' divorce and unstable living situations to estrangement from her mother and being forced to grow up fast, all helped shape Diane Lane into an independent woman guarded with the media and one who always draws a clear line between real life and the roles she plays. Diane Lane began her film career at the age of 13, starring in A Little Romance, 1979, opposite the legendary Laurence Olivier. The film wasn't just a stepping stone, it was an explosion that catapulted Diane Lane into nationwide fame overnight. On screen, she wasn't simply a cute kid but a real actress in a teenage body. Expressive eyes, nuanced emotions, and a depth of feeling far beyond her years. Less than a year later, she became the center of attention when she was featured on the cover of Time magazine's August 13, 1979 issue under the headline, Hollywood's Whiz Kids. The magazine described her as a fresh breeze in an era of cinema lacking in naturalism and instinct. Audiences didn't fall in love with this girl for being perfect. They were drawn to the rare honesty and purity she brought to the screen. Diane Lane didn't act as if reciting lines. She lived in each scene and made viewers, both adults and children, believe every emotion was real. At just 14, Diane had already gained what many actors spend an entire career chasing: the audience's trust. That brilliant beginning would become the reason why, despite all the ups and downs to come, she would always receive Hollywood's rarest currency, patience and respect. Soon after, Diane continued to appear in a string of major films like Touched, by Love and Six Pack. Then she entered a peak phase with high-profile titles such as Rumblefish, The Outsiders, Streets of Fire, and The Cotton Club. Many of these were directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who trusted her with 3 consecutive roles, an extraordinary vote of confidence for a teenage actress. By the age of 18, Diane Lane was already a millionaire thanks to high salaries, a packed filming schedule, and a constant presence on the big screen. However, the spotlight came with shadows. As her career soared, Diane also faced the harsher sides of fame. Still just a teenager, she was repeatedly linked romantically with co-stars Matt Dillon, Michael Pare, and Richard Gere simply because of their chemistry on screen. Diane often had to publicly deny these rumors or choose silence to protect her private life. She once shared, "Just because I play someone's lover in a film doesn't mean I love them in real life, but a lot of people don't understand that." Moreover, most of the roles she received during this time were variations of the ideal girlfriend, which led to her being typecast and rarely offered opportunities to show deeper emotional range. Audiences began to blur the line between Diane, the actress, and the characters she played, forcing her to maintain distance from the media and be more selective with her scripts. Diane Lane entered Hollywood by diving straight into stardom. An impressive but risky path, and she had to learn quickly and early that being famous is not the same as being understood. Being a great actress isn't enough. You also have to know how to survive in a world eager to write your story for you. After years of being typecast as the on-screen girlfriend and living in the blurred space between character and reality, Diane Lane entered a new phase in her career, one where she didn't just act, but demanded to be heard as a fully formed artist. In 2002, she starred in Unfaithful, directed by Diane Lane, playing Connie Sumner, a wife who cheats not out of lust, but because of a deep sense of loneliness and disconnection within an otherwise seemingly perfect life. It was the first time Diane was given such a complex, layered, and emotionally conflicted character. The scene where Connie sits on a train after her first affair, no dialogue, no sex, just trembling hands, dazed eyes, and shallow breaths, became a cinematic milestone. Years later, it is still referenced as a perfect example of acting through silence. What few people know is that the scene wasn't in the original script. In an interview with The Jess Cagle Show, Diane revealed, "We had wrapped the shot and were bringing the train back to the station when Diane Lane said, 'Just shoot.' Something. I didn't ask anything. I just closed my eyes and started. We filmed it in one take, never did it again." On Late Night with Conan O'Brien, she laughed and said, "There's no sex scene on the train, but everyone thinks there is. That's the power of emotion and the lens." Her performance as Connie earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress and won her the Actress of the Year award at the Hollywood Film Awards. But more importantly, it redefined her image in the public eye, not as the teenage girlfriend or defined by any male co-star, but as a true actress capable of carrying an entire film with nothing but her eyes and silence. After Unfaithful, Diane Lane didn't slow down. Less than a year later, she returned to the big screen with Under the Tuscan Sun, 2003, a film entirely different in tone, but one that took her career to even greater heights. In the movie, she played Frances, a recently divorced middle-aged woman who leaves her old life in the U.S. to buy a rundown villa in Tuscany and start over. The character wasn't born strong. She was someone thrown to the bottom and forced to rebuild. Frances wasn't searching for love. She was searching for herself. Diane Lane infused the role with real-life experience. In a conversation on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, she confessed that filming in Tuscany seemed like a dream vacation. For 5 weeks, it became overwhelming. She candidly shared, "I had eaten all the wine, all the olive oil, tried all the pasta, and I missed my daughter so much. I just wanted to fly home. I cried. I didn't want to be in paradise anymore." The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy. But more importantly, the image of Frances, a woman emerging from heartbreak, strong without posturing, became a new symbol for middle-aged women in Hollywood. Without dramatizing pain or showcasing fragility, Diane Lane portrayed rebirth in a deeply human way, slow, clumsy, but true. With Under the Tuscan Sun, Diane was no longer just an actress who had outgrown her teenage fame, but a grown woman connecting with an entire generation of women searching for themselves after loss. After Unfaithful and Under the Tuscan Sun, Diane Lane didn't repeat herself. She ventured into the realm of quiet, imperfect women often overlooked by history, but whose inner worlds were teeming with silent rebellion. In A Walk on the Moon, 1999, she played a wife drifting away from the marriage she once chose. While her husband is away for work, a summer vacation becomes a void. Diane's character quietly betrays him, not because the lover is irresistible, but because she no longer recognizes herself in the muted life of a dutiful wife. The film contains no dramatic confrontations, only the eyes of a woman who knows she's doing wrong but can't stop. The role earned Diane a nomination for the Independent Spirit Awards, but more importantly, it marked a new phase, acting with emotion, not dialogue. In Secretariat, 2010, Diane transformed into Penny Chenery, a middle-aged housewife who reluctantly inherits her father's horse farm in the male-dominated world of professional horse racing. In this world where men make all the decisions and women are expected to stay quiet, Penny not only survives but leads Secretariat to become one of the greatest racehorses in American history. This role shattered age-based stereotypes and served as Diane's quiet declaration, "I don't play the lover anymore, I play the leader." Then came Trumbo, 2015, where Diane stepped back from the center of the screen to portray Cleo Fincher, the wife of screenwriter Dalton Trumbo during the Hollywood blacklist era. It wasn't a role designed to tug at heartstrings. Cleo was the kind of woman rarely seen on film, silently carrying the burden of her husband's choices without complaint, without fleeing. Diane delivered that with suffocating resolve. No grand speeches were needed. Just by standing there, she conveyed the weight her character bore. Beyond portraying strong women in silence, Diane also returned to romance in Nights in Rodanthe, 2008, reuniting with Richard Gere after more than 2 decades. This time, they weren't passionate young lovers, but 2 grown individuals who had been broken, seeking trust in one another. Diane and Gere acted as if they'd once loved each other in real life, and the audience believed it because that kind of chemistry doesn't need to be proven. It speaks for itself in every glance and in the long silences shared between 2 souls trying to heal. For many years, Diane Lane maintained a calm and reserved image in the public eye, never one for red carpet drama or controversial statements. She was widely seen as the kind of artist who lived for her craft and steered clear of scandal. But in 2005, during an interview with Esquire magazine, Diane unexpectedly broke her long-held silence with a confession that left many stunned. "I had affairs with both Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins. No evasion, no blame. She said it plainly, as if shedding a long-carried weight. That admission didn't just shake the media. It forced the public to revisit years of romantic rumors that had swirled around her since the 1980s. Speculations. Once brushed aside about Matt Dillon, Michael Pare, and Richard Gere suddenly carried new weight. But what made this confession truly resonate wasn't the names Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins. It was the contradiction it revealed. A woman who so often portrayed characters wounded by betrayal had, in real life, crossed that very line. That paradox turned Diane Lane, long regarded as a symbol of raw, honest emotion, into a figure of greater complexity. Right and wrong, role and reality, victim and transgressor. But after some fans were disappointed, others believed her honesty was proof that Diane wasn't acting. She was living, even when the truth wasn't flattering. From a young age, Diane Lane was no stranger to having the public follow her personal life. Among all the relationships people talked about, Christopher Lambert was the one she stayed with the longest, and the one who still brought a warm smile to her face whenever she mentioned him later. They met in Paris in 1984 while Diane was promoting a film. Both were at the height of their careers. He, a European star; she, a rising Hollywood icon. It didn't take long for a cross-continental romance to begin. 4 years later, in 1988, they got married. Their marriage wasn't loud or tabloid-driven, And maybe that's why it's remembered as one of the rare peaceful chapters in Diane Lane's often turbulent life. They had one daughter, Eleanor Jasmine Lambert, born in 1993, who Diane would later call the guiding light in every life decision she made. But like many couples in the entertainment industry, Diane and Lambert couldn't escape the pressures of long distance, hectic schedules, and the clash of different cultures. They divorced in 1994 after 6 years of marriage, with no scandal and no bitterness. After the divorce, both continued on their separate paths and found new relationships. Diane Lane married actor Josh Brolin in 2004, while Christopher Lambert married actress Jimis Haft in 1999, though that marriage lasted only a year. From 2007 to 2014, he dated actress Sophie Marceau. What's worth noting is that even though they couldn't remain husband and wife, Diane never spoke ill of Lambert. Instead, she often emphasized, "We truly loved each other, but sometimes love alone isn't enough." What's admirable is that despite the split, they maintained a genuine friendship, co-parenting their daughter like true teammates. Not every relationship that ends results in loss. Some marriages, like Diane and Lambert's, conclude with acceptance and growth, not resentment. That's the way Diane Lane chooses to live, quietly, with responsibility, and never placing blame. After her divorce from Christopher Lambert, Diane Lane took nearly a decade to open her heart again. When she did, she chose someone just as complex, Josh Brolin, an actor known for his rugged looks and a private life marked by turbulence. They got engaged in July 2003 and married on August 15, 2004. From the outside, they seemed like an ideal couple. Both had endured heartbreak, both were mature, both breathed acting as if it were oxygen. But just over 4 months after the wedding, the relationship hit its first dark chapter. On December 20, 2004, Diane Lane called the police after an intense argument with Brolin at their home. Josh Brolin was arrested on a misdemeanor charge of domestic battery, a charge that quickly stirred up media frenzy. However, Diane declined to press charges, and their spokesperson later described the incident as a misunderstanding. No court proceedings followed. No public blame was cast. But the image of the couple was no longer the same. Lane made no statements to the press. She didn't accuse or defend herself through the media. She stayed silent. From that point on, Diane Lane seemed to retreat further inward, avoiding public events and dedicating more time to being a mother and the quiet anchor of her household. The marriage lasted nearly a decade, but ultimately ended when Diane chose to walk away. She and Brolin filed for divorce in February 2013, which was finalized on November 27 that same year. Neither spoke poorly of the other in public. There were no legal battles or post-divorce media campaigns. Everything happened quietly, just as Diane had always faced pain, without noise, but with resolve. After the divorce, both Diane Lane and Josh Brolin continued with their lives and careers. Brolin went on to find further success in acting and stated that he had been sober since 2013, following several alcohol-related incidents. If her first marriage ended in mutual respect and grace, her second bore the quiet marks of strain and emotional limits. Diane Lane never claimed to be a victim. Her choice to step back, stay silent, and walk away was the clearest statement she could make about self-respect and quiet strength. Diane Lane often portrays women who endure, who wrestle with emotion, and who carry profound depth, from the tormented Connie in Unfaithful to the reborn Frances in Under the Tuscan Sun, or Martha Kent, the epitome of silent sacrifice. But once the cameras stop rolling, she doesn't bring those emotions home. Diane Lane, in real life, is a different story. On a talk show, when asked about her cooking skills, she burst into laughter. "I'm only good at playing someone who can cook, in movies. In real life, I've actually bought takeout and pretended I made it myself, one of those cute little lies." Without trying to be perfect, Diane admits her flaws with ease, and that's exactly what makes her feel so relatable. An Oscar-nominated actress, once a Time magazine cover symbol of allure, but also someone who's fumbled with a toaster and couldn't tell a chicken egg from a duck's. In a 1995 Playboy interview, She also revealed a rather quirky and unexpected personal interest. I'm obsessed with thigh-high boots. I have a whole collection of high heels. I love the feeling of being lifted a few inches. Seductive, funny, and instinctive. That's Diane Lane. When she's not in character, she loves collecting antique furniture, enjoys walking, practices yoga, rides horses, and spends as much time as possible with her daughter Eleanor. No fanfare, no chasing trends. She lives on her own terms, simple but never ordinary. Perhaps that's why audiences always sense something so genuine about Diane Lane. Whether on screen or off, she doesn't craft an image. She simply lives as herself. Sometimes a little odd, sometimes a bit eccentric, but never fake. Unlike many Hollywood stars who turn to the media to bare their souls, Diane Lane chooses a different path. She doesn't strike back when misunderstood, or sob publicly after heartbreak. She stays silent, as if what happens in her life only needs to be understood by her alone. Some say that kind of silence is weakness, but to Diane, it's strength. Silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because there's no need to say it. After 2 failed marriages, a controversial arrest, and a career-long swirl of romantic rumors, she still protects a private space, one the press can't reach and where fame holds no power over her emotions. Some stars make the world remember them through noise. Diane Lane chose to leave her mark through silence. No scandals, no explosive box office campaigns, no saturated media presence, just a woman who steps in front of the camera, speaks with her eyes, and turns pain into art. In 2005, VH1 ranked her 79th on their list of the 100 greatest kid stars, recognizing an undeniable truth. Diane Lane reached extraordinary heights from the very beginning. That same year, she was also named 7th on the list of the most attractive stars over 40. Not because she chased beauty standards, but because with age, Diane embodied resilience, experience, and an inimitable aura. Audiences love her for one reason. Diane Lane never plays the same role twice. From Connie in Unfaithful to Frances in Under the Tuscan Sun, or Martha Kent in the DC universe, each woman comes with her own story full of scars, contradictions, and light. Diane doesn't paint her characters. She peels them back layer by layer, fear by fear, and gives the audience raw, relatable reflections of themselves. Few actresses maintain a thriving career past 40. Diane Lane is different. She hasn't just lasted. She's evolved. She doesn't fight for the spotlight or rebrand herself as a feminist icon or carry grand declarations. Her quietness, not claimed in the name of anything nor bound to any trend, is her most powerful voice. Few know that Diane Lane also devotes time to community work. She quietly partners with Heifer International, supporting global poverty relief programs. No loud announcements or public donation drives, just calm, committed action. Silent, but never indifferent. Unseen, but never inactive. Diane Lane's legacy isn't measured in golden statues, but in the trust audiences place in her every time she appears. When she cries, we hurt. When she's silent, we understand. When she walks away, we miss her. And that's something few in the entertainment industry can hold on to over 4 decades. An absolute honesty in her craft and in the way she lives, no longer at the center of tabloid romances or heavyweight film roles. Diane Lane now chooses a slower, quieter, and more self-directed pace of life. Just as she has faced every storm over the past 4 decades, she still acts, but not to maintain fame. It's simply part of her lifeblood. On the small screen, Diane left a strong impression as a sharp-witted politician in House of Cards, 2018, and more recently, as Slim Keith, a New York high society icon, in the series Feud, Capote vs. the Swans, 2024. The role earned her an Emmy nomination, reaffirming that at nearly 60, Diane Lane isn't just surviving in Hollywood, she's redefining what it means to be a mature, layered, and fearless actress. No lavish mansions, no parties, no noisy social media. Diane opts for a minimalist lifestyle. She practices yoga every morning, rides horses on weekends, and walks whenever she can. She collects antique furniture, enjoys flower arranging, gardening, and reading. In an interview, Diane said that keeping her mind and body healthy each day matters more to her than the spotlight ever did. Above all, She devotes as much time as possible to her daughter Eleanor Jasmine Lambert, born in 1993 from her first marriage to Christopher Lambert. Eleanor is now a model and freelance writer. She didn't follow her mother into acting, but still carries the spirit of an independent artist, having appeared in Vanity Fair, Numero, and fronted several fashion campaigns in New York. Diane once shared that Eleanor is a soulmate, the reason I don't lose myself in a world full of noise. At 60, Diane Lane has no desire to cling to youth. She once said, "Aging is a privilege. Every wrinkle is a memory." In an industry obsessed with youth and smoothness, that statement sounds like a manifesto. No cosmetic surgery, no chasing ideals. Diane Lane embraces aging as part of the journey, beautiful, multi-layered, and rich with experience. Diane Lane doesn't need to proclaim herself a legend, because simply by watching how she has moved through 4 decades, from the 13-year-old girl on the cover of Time magazine to the 60-year-old woman calmly sitting on an Emmy-nominated set, you understand that some talents don't need noise to be remembered. She is still beautiful, not because of surgery or perfect lighting, but because she dares to wear every wrinkle and every scar of life like a badge of honor. In a Hollywood that's glitzy and ruthlessly selective, Diane Lane is living proof that natural beauty and a resilient spirit never go out of style.